Just, are you going to go up and tell them for sure that they just have two? Okay. I'll go tell them.
Okay. All right.
Well, then you have to tell us.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Is it
Not at all.
Not at all.
It's going to make us very happy. Thank you so much.
I think I felt a sigh of relief. 2 minutes is so much easier.
2 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
They have no opponents.
She said they're invisible.
Oh, they're invisible. No, they're invisible. People do not get time.
They get invisible time.
They do not get time.
So they get invisible.
Good evening. All my stuff is gone. I'm going to welcome you to the candidate forum. As you can see, we have the 2 candidates who are running unopposed for county recorder and county treasurer. They are going to have 2 minutes apiece for their session to tell us why they should be elected, even though they're the only ones running. And then we're going to take a very short recess, but you will have some advertising from me about voting. So stay for that because that's really pretty exciting. So I'm going to say, go ahead, and we'll start with Ms. Fountain.
Hi, my name is Lori Fountain, and I am a deputy treasurer in the treasurer's office. I've been there a little over 11 and a half years. I have had 2 great leaders before me. Roberta Roth is retiring and Diane Kiefer before her. So our office has a lot of years of experience in it. So we're pretty good at what we do there. In a property tax office, we take care of your property taxes, which nobody likes to pay. And I totally understand that, but there's really nothing I can do about it. Sorry. And we take care of the county's money, the investments, and distributing that. We have a lot of responsibility there. We take it pretty seriously. There's no room for error. And really the only thing that we can control there is the customer service that we provide you. Everything else is set down from the state. It's in the Code of Iowa book, and you could read it if you want. We have no option on what we can change or anything there. We do presently do our tax sale in the office. We could actually do that online if we want. We were looking into that. But I like to keep things local so that local people around seem to work better with, our customers who have to pay taxes, as far as working with them if something should happen where they get their property and they could sell it back to them. Our motor vehicle department works 6 days a week. So we do have a person out at the DOT office on Saturdays to provide extra service. So they're available for 6 days a week. Really, that's about all I have to say for my office. I mean, I do bring a lot of experience to it. I'm a deputy treasurer now, and I take care of all of our tax sale stuff. So I feel like I will do a very good job for you guys, and I can just jump right in where I'm at. There won't be any transition. So thank you, and hopefully I'll have your vote.
Okay. Good evening. And first off, I'd like to start out by thanking the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum. My name is Lisa Kent. I am the current Wapello County Recorder. I have been in the Recorder's office for the past 15 years, and the last 5 of those I've been the County Recorder. Prior to that, I worked for an attorney here in town as a real estate assistant, so I have a lot of real estate background, which helped me transition into the Recorder's office. I've been pretty much my whole life. I lived here in Wapello County. I'm married and have 2 adult sons. I'm a member of the Ottumwa High Noon Kiwanis and currently are their treasurer. I'm a member of the Agency Public Library Board as well as Agency Tri-T. I'm a 2016 graduate of Ottumwa Leadership Academy, and I'm also a certified recorder through the Iowa County Recorders Association. Some of the accomplishments that I've achieved since taking over as recorder is we have brought back passport applications to our office. We've been a passport acceptance facility for about 4.5 years now. We've also added annually, we've done it for the last 3 years, we do a Saturday where we take applications for passports, which allows customers that can't normally get to our office the Monday through Friday hours to come in on a Saturday and apply. We've also added a Spanish-speaking clerk who assists us with our Hispanic customers, which we've never had before. And we've also added federal duck stamps to our office. Our office is constant. We don't set rules. We have to follow rules that are set by higher offices. So we're constantly changing. And the one thing that I can control is customer service. And I do that by hiring quality employees and giving them the education and the tools that they need to provide that good customer service. And I hope that you will allow me to continue to do that for the next 4 years and beyond. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a real quick changeover. And next up is going to be the Board of Supervisors. But until that time, let's talk a little bit about voting. You can do early voting right now up at the courthouse. It's basically an absentee ballot. It started on October 8th. It will end November 5th. General election, of course, is November 6th. So all you have to do is when the courthouse is open, you go up to second floor, you fill out the information that they need, they give you the ballot, they take it back when you're all done with it, and you are done, and you don't have to worry about voting day. Don't have to worry about where your precinct is. You don't have to worry about if you've moved and you don't know where to go. You don't have to worry about if your precinct closed and nobody knows where you're supposed to go, because you can go to the courthouse and get it done on your lunchtime or after work or before work.
Yeah, thank you. Look.
You will need ID when you vote. In 2018, ID is required to vote in Iowa. Acceptable forms of identification is the driver's license, your Iowa non-operator's ID, the voter ID card that some of you might have gotten in the mail. If you have a military or veterans ID, we take those. If it's the U.S. passport, we can take those. If you have an out-of-state driver's license, just moved in from Illinois, we will take those, but you need to bring us proof of residency, like a utility bill or your bank account or a check that gives that address, something that shows that you're really an Iowa resident, but we will take out-of-state identification. So we have our 3 candidates for Board of Supervisors. They will get 3 minutes, 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
2 minutes, 2 minutes. Everybody gets 2 minutes. 2 minutes to introduce yourself, tell us why we should vote for you, and then we will start questions.
As I said last night, I'll let you know where to go, so don't worry about keeping track of that, just keep track of what you're going to say. Okay? So, Mike, Mr. Grooms, you again.
Hi, my name is Mike Grooms. I'd like to thank the Lady League of Voters for having the opportunity to speak to the public. For everybody who doesn't know me, I have been a lifelong rural resident of Wapello County, 51 years old, married for 20 plus years, give or take, 2 teenage daughters. That's why I have gray hair. I've worked in the construction business my entire life, born into it. Originally, when I got out of high school, I started with Grooms and Company, and then worked for them for about 10 or 12 years, then went out on my own, started a business called Bridge City Construction and Electric, sold it. Now I own one called Mike's Custom Construction. I've been self-employed for approximately 18, 19 years, something like that. I feel the biggest asset I bring to the table, being a resident of rural Wapello County and a small business owner, is I have a different perspective on budgets, money can be moved, things like that. It's important. We're in kind of a bad time right now, and it's time for a change. My number one concern is looking towards the future. When you hear county supervisors talk, very few of them talk 5-year plan, 10-year plan, 20-year plan, what they want to see in 2 or 3 years. That's what I'm bringing to the table. That's what I want to do. And hopefully we can see some change in the Board of Supervisors in this coming year, because we need it. And I'm asking everybody for your vote. So thank you very much.
Wayne, before you, okay, first of all, we're not going to clap.
I don't even know that.
We'll clap afterwards outside. Okay, but I'll get to you, Wayne, in just a second. I forgot to mention earlier, we have people here from LULAC, which is the Latinos United.
League of United Latin American Citizens.
Thank you, thank you. And so there are some people who are being translated for, so I'm going to ask you guys to be sure that when you give your statements and answer questions, that they are clear and a little bit slower than you normally would talk. For the translator.
Want to get your full information to them. So, Mr. Hewitt, you're up next, please.
Okay, my name is Wayne Hewitt, running for county supervisor also. I'm a resident of Wapello County all my life, been a Democrat. I spent time in the Army, 30 years at Deere & Company, and I've owned an independent tire dealership for 35 years here in Ottumwa also. Of course, I've been married about 49 years, so that's about all I got for right now.
I consider myself the luckiest guy in Wapello County. You know, to have been born here, get to serve on your city council, get to serve as mayor of Ottumwa, and get to serve as a county supervisor. I'm the luckiest guy in Wapello County. It has never mattered to me whether you live in the city of Ottumwa, one of the small towns, or in the rural area. Every one of you out there that's had contact with me, I don't ask where you live, I respond. If you have a problem, I take care of it. If you have a concern, I address it. If you want me to drive down to Olden in the morning and look at some problem, I'll be there. If it's Eddyville in the afternoon, I'll be there. You know, I get kind of nervous when someone like Mike just said, it's time for a change. Let me see, what are we going to change? We've not raised taxes in Wapello County for 5 years. You really want to change that? You know, our tax rate when I got in office was up around $12. Now it's down around $10. You want to change that back? I don't think so. Our debt is almost non-existent. And you know, counties around us, we have a $3.50 limit. That's all you can raise taxes in the general fund. There are counties around us that have pleaded their case to the state, and they're up to $3.75 or $4. They've exceeded the statutory limit. We never have. You don't really want to change that, do you? And if you live in the rural area, be real careful. You know what the statutory limit is there? $3.95. You know where we're at? $2.65. Do you want to change that? I think you better think twice before you just look at something and say, let's change for change's sake. Thank you.
Okay. First question is from Vicki Wilson. Wapello County has a high rate of poverty. What solutions do you have to address this issue?
Mr. Hewitt, you'll go first, please.
Well, we have a high rate of poverty because some of the people don't want to work. And there's jobs there that they could do and they won't do it. So that would, if they go to work, they wouldn't be that much poverty. Other than that, there's not much you can do with it.
Mr. Parker?
Well, it's difficult when you say high rate of poverty to understand what poverty is. Now, I was raised in a 2-room tar paper shack with no electricity, no plumbing. I didn't even consider us poor then. But have you driven down the highways and seen the billboards? We want workers, $20 an hour. You've seen the signs up here at the cargo complex, $18, $19, $20 an hour. We want workers. We've got the lowest unemployment rate maybe, in years. So when we look at poverty, those that are in poverty, we have programs in place to help those who have no way to get out of it. We already have programs for that. Some people don't want the programs and they don't want to work.
Poverty, like Jerry said, if you don't want to work, and Wayne, both of them said it, you can't make somebody work. There's people imported here who have no intentions of getting a job. They're sitting here on our welfare nickel doing nothing and have no intentions of doing nothing. Now, the problem is with Wapello County is everybody who wants a job pretty much has a job. How much economic development can we withstand? The poverty level is a mentality problem. It's not an economic problem. What I think Wapello County needs is more opportunities for people. But as far as poverty and people who want to be in poverty, I'm not sure there's much we can do.
Okay. I have a question from Cheryl Plank. I think she probably intended it for the legislators, but with Wapello County having such a high population, maybe not higher than anybody else, but it just seems like a higher population of mentally ill or handicapped. What are your thoughts on the current Medicaid managed care system in Iowa? And if you had the choice to change it, which obviously you don't have the choice, because except by election of your legislators, would you change anything with the current system? And if you have some ideas of how Wapello County can take up that slack that I think is getting missed, we would listen to that too.
Mr. Parker, you will take this question first.
I'm not going to ask you to repeat that. The Medicaid system, I don't care which side you're on, it's failing. We have people out there who are not insured. That shouldn't happen in America. Now, I don't think you want to ask a county supervisor how to correct that, because I don't like giving advice on something if I don't know all the ins and outs of it. What I do know is what we're doing. And I serve on the governance board. That's the 4-county board that handles mental health. The state has given us things that we have to do. And we've added things in there we don't have to do. Jail diversion programs. There are some people that shouldn't be in jail. They should be in a hospital, or they should be in something other than a locked up facility. It costs us too much to be there. So what we have to do is just what we as supervisors can do. And that's address things on the local level.
I'm not sure I'm able to comment on this topic very deep. All I know is what I've been told in the last few days is that Medicaid has turned over into a privatization. It's been privatized, and one side's against it, one side's for it. I don't know the answer, but I do have a personal connection with a lady in town who is $1, she makes $1 too much to be on Medicaid. Now, to me, I think they said her medicine costs $600 or $800 a month, and with her Social Security and everything, but she's $1 too much to be put on Medicaid. To me, that's pretty sad. We need to help people with that. There should be a margin of error there, I would think.
Mr. Hewitt?
I'm not certified in any way to comment on that really, but I think the way they're working it now is probably working. It may need some refinement, but it's out of a supervisor's hands altogether,
Again, this was a question, I think, more for the legislators, but I'm going to ask you guys too. And that is, the question was about putting different areas as sanctuary cities or sanctuary areas. And I would be interested in hearing what your thoughts on maybe Wapello County being a sanctuary county, or if Ottumwa were to become one, how that would fit in with your beliefs.
Mr. Grimm, you'll take this first.
My personal belief is sanctuary cities are ridiculous. I mean, we have violators where people are breaking the law. Do we have sanctuary cities for shoplifters? Do we have sanctuary cities for prostitution? I don't know where it ends and where it stops. In my opinion, you shouldn't have a sanctuary anything for somebody that's breaking the law. And that's my own personal opinion, and I'm not sure how it affects county supervisor's position, but it's my own personal feelings.
No comment.
Chicken.
We're not a sanctuary county. You know, if you have a law, whether it's speeding, running stoplights, murder, whatever it is, you have to uphold that law. And if we have that law, we need to address it. But if you talk to the sheriff's department, they're going to have a problem. If they try and hold somebody, just hold somebody because they look guilty, because they have a problem. There's tremendous lawsuits as a result of that. So unless the law is clarified, we'll continue to not be a sanctuary county, but we are not going to hold people without some kind of warrant to hold them. That's very costly, not to us, supervisor. That's costly to you because you'll be helping pay for the lawsuits. Someone above us has to change the law. If you're going to do something, you got to give us the tools to work with. We don't want people here are criminals, people are breaking the law, but you got to give us the tools to work with.
Okay. And I have a question from Doug Knapp, which kind of follows along, but not exactly, so I don't know why I said that. Based on the limit of immigration and refugees proposed nationally, how can you ensure that the largest private employer in the area, JBS, will not be forced to close? How will that affect local economy? And how will that affect any new businesses that help the local economy?
You're probably asking the questions of the people that really aren't involved in that. And I wouldn't want to get involved in it. It's a big mess, and it needs to stay up above.
Well, I think if you enforce that, JBS is safe. They've had a good work environment there as far as actually having anybody illegal there. I don't think they're intentionally breaking the law. I think JBS is a good employer. If we lost them, it would be devastating. Take 3,000 jobs and shut it down. Some of you, I don't see anybody out there as old as I am, but if there were, you might remember when Morrell's closed and what we had to do in the next 2 years. And I was involved in making Ottumwa an all-American city. It was difficult and it was tough to do. So I don't think JBS is doing anything illegal intentionally. And these questions are even higher, not just higher than supervisors. I'm not sure the legislature is going to be able to do anything on this.
I'm going to agree with Wayne on this one. I'm going to leave this to the higher representatives in Congress.
Chicken.
Okay, so that is all the questions that I have for county supervisors. So closing statements.
Mr. Parker, you'll give the closing statement.
What about the league's question?
Oh,
I don't know.
do you have a different question?
It's disappeared. No, it disappeared.
They can be asked.
You remember what it was? We sent it to you.
Yeah, I remember what it was. Do you realize how many hours we spent, all three of us, studying this?
You did your due diligence. Jerry, would you read the question?
Well, I don't have the question written down, but what? What the question was is, what are the barriers to economic development And what would we as supervisors do to correct that? Well, the barriers, have you looked at some of the things you bought lately? Turn over and look at the tag. Made in Japan, made in China. That's a barrier to development in Wapello County because we can't compete with Japan and China. But one of the barriers that I am really aware of, because we had a Swedish firm that we were going to give the county home to, and we were down to the 2 final cities, one here and one in Nebraska. And we lost. It went to Nebraska. So we thought, congratulations, Nebraska. Why did we lose? And the Swedish people said, you had a real good presentation. However, we will save $2 million a year in utility costs by going to Nebraska. If you remember a few years ago when Wapello County put together a group of people to go oppose the increases in the electric bill, and we had a little bit of success, but we worked out a presentation, me and the plant manager of John Deere. I talked about the people part. He talked about the company. And he said, let's pick John Deere up and let's set it in Oskaloosa. You know what happens? They save $600,000 a year on their light bill. If you want to look at a real deterrent to economic development here, it's our utility costs. And we have to face it all the time. I don't know how much time I get since I asked the question, but... And another thing we have, there was a manpower study done. We have an aging workforce, and we're limited on the people who are willing to go to work. We have to target what we want. And the one that we targeted was a factory called Job Corps. And it doesn't make a car or it doesn't make a tractor. But what it does, it makes young folks that are productive members of society. And I'm proud to have been part of that development.
Would you like me to read the question? In your opinion, what is the greatest obstacle to economic development in Wapello County, and what specific action or actions would you like to see the Board of Supervisors take to reduce or eliminate this obstacle? In my opinion, when you talk about economic development, you're talking about private money investing in a community. The number one thing, in my opinion, that's stopping economic development in this geographical area is crime. Period. Crime. High taxes. Our taxes, I don't know that they're all that high. It's just over regulations. We haven't built, 15 new homes in Wapello County in the last fiscal year. Everybody knows homes are your bread and butter of your tax base. If you live outside of an incorporated city, you have to build on 10.5 acres. Not too many people in this room can afford 10.5 acres to build a home. I don't know when that was brought in. When was that, Jerry?
A few years ago.
Yeah. In my opinion, it's the biggest deterrent you have in Wapello County. There's no homes being built here. In let's just use Davis County as an example. There's over 75 new homes going in. We wouldn't have 75 new homes in 6 years in Wapello County at the rate we're going. But crime is our number one thing. We need to get the sheriff's department more deputy sheriffs, more vehicles. We have got to get the crime rate down, or you won't see a nickel come to this town anytime soon.
Well, I tell you, it's going to be hard to top them, but I must read this wrong in what they do, because it's an economic development in Wapello County. That means we need to bring in something. True?
However your interpretation is.
That is my interpretation of it, bringing in work. Factories, or not just mom and pop stores, but you got to bring in someone that's going to employ more than 10 people. And I think we got a prime example of Cargill is on the outside edge of Wapello County. Pioneer is on the outside edge of Wapello County. I'm not sure what kept them from coming in, but I've heard there was no concessions to be made for it. I don't know that, but I think that's a big problem. And this Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress is a good thing that the county needs to be involved in. I know they've talked to them about it, but I don't think they've come on board completely. And that's to bring in new stuff into Ottumwa, you know, and the surrounding community. So that's my opinion of it.
We'll do closing statements now, and Mr. Parker, you're up for the first closing. Excuse me. How long? And Mr.
I'm sorry.
It's 1 minute, is what I have on my sheet.
Yeah, but I did find a question that I thought was for somebody else, but it's for the Board of Supervisors. The sheriff has made numerous references and requests over many years to address deficiency in staffing and public safety at the sheriff's office, which go ignored. If public safety is important to you, or is public safety important to you, is the first question. And how would you address public safety in Wapello County if elected? And this was a question by Mark Miller, Wapello County Sheriff.
So Mr. Parker, you'll take that, please.
Well, you know, we have to look at the budget and we have to look at our priorities. We were facing a cut of $550,000 in the budget this year. That means people. But you know what we did? We didn't cut. We moved 2 of the sheriff's people that were out of the basic fund into the rural fund. We'd only had 1 in there forever. That saved 2 deputies. I don't think it would look like that we're opposed to hiring deputies. In the area of the jail, they came to us, the sheriff came to us and said, if you'd allow us to hire 3 part-time jailers, we can save you thousands of dollars in overtime. We accepted it without checking really careful. However, you know what the real result was? We hired the 3 part-time at their request, and we paid more in overtime. We will accept those requests, and we'll look at them. But we have a county to run, not one department. I'm going to support the sheriff's department, but I'm not going to jump and jeopardize everything else to put more in the sheriff's department.
The sheriff's department needs more deputies. I did a little studying on my own. I contacted Davis County to see how many sheriff's deputies they had enrolled, and they have 9, I believe is the number. Wapello County has 11, excluding the sheriff Mark. Their population in Davis County total 7,500. Ours is roughly 35,000 plus. We are trying to do a lot with very little. And these guys sometimes are by themselves at night. We know the drug problem in this part of the country. And to ask a deputy to put his life on the line every night without support is pretty horrendous in my mind. I think a county supervisor's top priority is to protect the citizens in which he's supervising over. And if we don't do that, it is going to be detrimental to this community, period.
I've talked this over with Mark several times and the chief deputy and some of the deputies on the roads. They are understaffed on the road. Wapello County's got 750 miles to cover a night. And you can't do it with what they've got now. And besides, they're running by themselves, which is highly dangerous now. Back in the days, it wasn't that way. But now it is. And I want to see an officer put in the school, Cardinal and Eddyville, because the response time for our deputies to get there is not soon enough, because they could be at one end of the county and have to be at the other end, and they can't make it. And that's one of the big priorities is the safeties of the kids and of the deputies and ourselves, you know. So I'm in favor of putting more deputies in.
All right, closing. So you'll have 1 minute each to do a closing. Mr. Brooms, you're going to get first, please.
Well, thank you for the opportunity this evening. I'm glad we got to go early so that the Congress and the area reps can hear what we have to say and what we have to talk about, because it all starts at a local basis. I'm running November 6th, hopefully get elected this time, and we can make a change in Wapello County, and it starts with the sheriff's department getting the crime rate down. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to look for the future, not the past. I don't care if we were an all-American city in the 80s, whatever. We need to look to the future, or we're not going to have one. Thank you very much.
I also would like to thank for the opportunity to be here. We're talking about a lot of things tonight, but I think that we need to look forward and as a supervisors, work together as a team. In a team, there's not an I. It's got to be a team effort to work together to get these situations figured out. And like I said, there's 2 seats open, so just get out and vote.
I think probably I'll use this closing statement as maybe just some clarification. When Mike said you have to have 10 acres out in the county, no, you don't. We just had a hearing and a guy's putting it on 4 acres. If you look at the number of homes built in the county, where's the biggest population? City of Ottumwa or outside the city of Ottumwa? Biggest population, city of Ottumwa. Who built more homes, the county or the city? County did. When you talk about hiring sheriff's deputies, we've already told the sheriff for the last 2 years that as soon as we get the pipeline money, which should be this year, we're going to hire at least 1, maybe 2 deputies. The thing is, when they tell you that we need to do something, someone needs to give you the solution, not just the problem. We're short of deputies. How are you going to pay for them? What department are you going to cut? Who are you going to take it away from? That's the problem with running against, even though they're my friends, new people. They can tell you things and they really believe it and they hope that it happens, but it's not the way they're saying.
Thank you very much, each of you, and
We will stop for another short informative thing about voting. If anybody cares to see it, you can ask me later. I do have a sample ballot. Some of the changes are you will not be able to vote a straight ballot. That was changed. You now have to go through and mark every one. You can no longer say Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever. You've got to go through and mark each and every one. They are both, there's 2-sided. Of course, you know, we have the governor and lieutenant governor, Secretary of State. We have a Democrat, Republican, and Libertarian, auditor, treasurer, Secretary of Agriculture, Attorney General. Then we have the state senator, which we will be doing, state representative. Some of the Ottumwa ones will have the other representatives that are going to be speaking. The one that I got from my precinct is not covered by them. On the back is the county treasurer, county recorder, county attorney. Then there's the nonpartisan offices, which is Soil and Water Commission, Agricultural Extension Council. And then on the ballot this year are judges. There are Court of Appeals judges. And then there are District Judge 8, Crystal Cronk, Lucy Gammon, Myron Gukin, and Sean Showers. And then we have a District Associate Judge 8A, and that's Daniel Kitchen. So it says right on here, turn the ballot over. And so it's both sides. But the main thing I want you to know is you're not going to be able to vote a straight party ticket. So we have our county attorney. Because you took the sheet that had the question on it. You took it. Did you put it back? Well, I didn't see it. Okay. I'll ask it first. Okay. Jeez. Make a little mistake.
The question about the deputies that was sheriff was intended for. So if they can
He told Jean that it was for the supervisors.
Okay.
So, okay. All right, we have Ruben Neff and Gary Oldenburger. Oldenburger. So we will start with opening statements. 2 minutes.
Mr. Neff, you're first, please.
Thank you. Hi, Wapello County. My name's Ruben Neff, and I'm the Republican candidate for Wapello County Attorney. In the 8 years that I've practiced law, I've been the lead trial attorney in 17 criminal jury trials, the assisting or supporting trial attorney in 13 criminal jury trials, as well as the lead trial attorney in over 20 bench trials. All put together, I have almost 60 trials of experience, and together, that is more trial experience than the entire Wapello County Attorney's Office combined. I was born in North Carolina, and eventually at 4.5, I moved down to Costa Rica with my family. While there, I learned Spanish. I am fluent in both written and spoken Spanish. And then I graduated high school with both the US diploma and Costa Rican diploma. I moved to Florida, where I obtained my bachelor's in economics. And then from there, I obtained my law degree from the University of Florida. I met my wife down there, and while we were together, I worked my way up from just juvenile cases and misdemeanors all the way up to death penalty cases, murder cases. And I actually successfully argued in front of the Florida Supreme Court on those death penalty cases. Now, my wife's an Iowan, so we ended up moving up here to be close to family. We actually bought our first home right here in Wapello County, and we've set roots here. For the past 1.5 years, I have prosecuted for this community. And in that 1.5 years, I earned the trust of the community that works closest with prosecutors. I became the only candidate for county attorney that is endorsed by any form of law enforcement. I'm endorsed by the local Teamsters Union, the Ottumwa Police Officers Union branch of them. They have vouched for my experience and leadership because they have seen me at trial over and over again and how I work with victims. I ask that you vote for that training, for that leadership, for that experience. I ask that you vote for the change that we need that's already been vouched for law enforcement. I do ask that you vote Neff come November 6th.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Gary Oldenburger. I'm the Wapello County Attorney. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a native Iowan. My family's from Northeast Iowa. I grew up mostly in the Des Moines area, spent some time in Fort Dodge and Council Bluffs as well. My wife and I have been married for 23 years. We have 8 children. The 3 oldest are getting out of the house now. The rest are at home. My wife teaches here in the Ottumwa School District. After we were married, I joined the Air Force. I served on active duty for almost 10 years. First as an enlisted person, I then completed my bachelor's degree and then became an officer, left the Air Force as a captain. After the Air Force, I went to Drake Law School, where I obtained my law degree, and then I obtained a second law degree, a master's of law, focused in criminal law, because I knew that I wanted to be a prosecutor. While in law school, I interned at the Attorney General's office, learning how to be a prosecutor from some of the top prosecutors in the state. I also spent 8 months interning with the Polk County Attorney's office before coming here to Wapello County. I've been here in Wapello County for the last 7 years. A little over 4 years ago, I became the county attorney. I was first appointed as county attorney and then elected as county attorney. So over the last 7 years, I've prosecuted a variety of cases. I've also obtained additionally over 400 hours of training in being a prosecutor. Also in the last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to gain experience and understand how to perform all of the other duties of county attorney outside of criminal prosecution, from tax appeals to fence line disputes. So I've got a wide variety of experience, and I ask that you vote for me in November. Thank you.
The league's question is, in your opinion, what is the biggest issue you see currently facing the office of county attorney in Wapello County? And what specific steps would you undertake as county attorney to address this issue?
And Mr. Oldenburger, you'll take first.
Okay. Well, I think the biggest challenge we face is just a lack of resources at the state level. Over the last several years, budgets have been cut to the judicial branch, to the Department of Corrections, to mental health services, to substance abuse treatment services. And so we have to find ways to deal with that lack of resources, because the loss of resources at the state level piles down onto the county. One thing that I'm doing currently is working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to work on transferring some of the cases we have here, especially firearms cases, to federal court and allow us to use their resources. Also continuing to work with our legislators, and every year I go to the legislature as part of the Iowa County Attorneys Association and meet with legislators and advocate for the needs that we need as prosecutors.
Yes, it is accountability. We are failing to hold defendants accountable for the full extent of their actions. And not only that, we are not holding ourselves accountable to our own community, to you. The reason why I say that, we do not have the structure and procedures in place that I have seen in every other jurisdiction that I have worked. For instance, the National Association of State Courts makes recommendations based off of actual state court studies. It's not some ideal, it's based off of real world studies. And they recommend that we be done with 75% of our felonies within 4 months. After reviewing records from the state courts here, it looks like we're not even getting done with 21 to 30% of our felonies in that time period. And the reason why that matters, we are under a strain of resources. As my opponent mentioned, he's absolutely correct. But the more we have cases building up, when you start with 100 cases and you don't move them quickly enough, by 6 months, you're at 200 cases. There's more defendants in the jail. That's taxpayers paying for each one of them every day they sit there. We need better accountability. We need those procedures.
This question is from David McKenzie. What policies do you intend to implement to reduce violent crime in Wapello County?
When it comes to violent crime, one of the biggest problems that we have is that we've turned our jail into a revolving door. Now, part of that is jail is at capacity a lot of the time, but a bigger problem is that if we have supervision requiring for attorneys to move their cases in a timely manner, according to our standards that are nationally set, Polk County follows them, Hillsborough County down in Florida follows them, Polk County in Florida follows them, St. Petersburg, Florida follows them. If we actually move our cases, that will make sure that people do not have the chance to get out of jail because of overcrowding, or bond out because judges want to get people out of jail if it gets overcrowded. When we're getting folks processed quickly, they get sent to prison, particularly for violent crimes. They don't have the chance to get out and commit yet another crime, victimize yet another person. That also lowers the amount of cases that we handle generally in the long term, because if we're moving these cases, we're getting the people that need to be out of our community out.
Thank you. One of the primary focuses, again, as we've seen lately, is issues with firearms-related crimes. One of the problems we've seen a lot of is burglaries in the rural areas where firearms are stolen, and those are later used to commit other types of crimes. And so again, a lot of this is understanding the resources we have and prioritizing how we use them. So again, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office to move some of those firearms crimes into federal court, where they can use their resources and where they can obtain longer prison sentences, so that way they can stay out of our community for longer periods of time. And then the other is focusing on prioritizing firearm-related crime and making sure that we impose prison sentences for people who have firearms crimes, rather than dismissing them as others have in the past.
What is the county attorney's budget, and how will you use it to prosecute crimes?
Okay. Well, our budget, I guess I couldn't give you the exact number. I think it's in the neighborhood of $770,000. The issue with our budget is pretty well dedicated almost entirely to salaries. There's not really a lot of flexibility in our budget, a lot of, very little discretionary room in the way of office supplies and things like that. It's almost entirely salary and medical examiner's costs because we pay for that. And so primarily the thing that we can do with our budget is be efficient with the use of resources. Over the last 6 years, I've worked a lot with the city of Ottumwa as well as the county IT department to improve our IT systems that we have in place to be more efficient and use less man hours in processing cases. And so continuing to use that technology will be key to saving money and man hours.
Our budget for the 2018 to 2019 fiscal year was $779,000. That was what was budgeted for the county attorney's office here in Wapello. Now, my opponent's absolutely right. A lot of that does go to wage, it does go to salary. We do have several folks that are coming near the end of their retirement or their careers. We particularly do have one support staff that is looking to retire soon. What we need to do is we need to hire an investigator with the salary that she will be leaving as she retires. And the reason why I think that's incredibly important in this county, if we use our budget wisely, we can tap into quite a bit of evidence that's sitting right there for us to use. The county jail records all jail phone calls. We have people threatening witnesses recorded on calls. We have confessions over and over again, a defendant calling his mother, telling them everything he did. We do not have the jail staff right now to listen to each of those calls. The attorneys do not have the time to listen to each of those calls. Sometimes we're lucky, but we do need an investigator so that they can look into those types of things, because that is an excellent way to achieve a conviction and keep us safe. Thank you.
That pretty much answered the second question on the budget. I'm going to ask a question that I think is probably going to have to be settled in Des Moines, but I think what you guys can say and do, I'll start over. This question is probably more for the legislators, but I think I would like to know your opinion also. And it really has to do with the school shootings, things that have happened near the schools, guns at schools. Are you in favor of banning guns? And if you are in favor, are there certain areas that you would ban them? And I'll just kind of leave it open to that.
Thank you. We have several laws that are already in place. We do not need gun bans. However, felons and domestic abusers are prohibited from possessing firearms. It's a specific statute that's already in place, and we need to take advantage of that statute. When people are on probation, the Department of Corrections, frankly, is undermanned and understaffed and underfunded to the utmost level, but we need to still focus on the domestic offenders we have here that are already on probation. We can easily search them since they're on probation. They do give up several rights when they are on probation. Keep them from having firearms. Same with felons. We need to be more active in that regard. And though the legislature does need to handle this matter, we have a bully pulpit. We as county attorneys or assistant county attorneys are at this point candidate for county attorneys. I guess I got ahead of myself. But we can use the media to put pressure on Des Moines. We had a horrible, dangerous situation back in August, and that needs to be broadcast to them constantly. They need to do the right thing.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I think that's mainly a question for the folks in Des Moines, but again, as I said, every year I have participated in the County Attorneys Association Day at the legislature where we advocate for those things with legislators. And again, I think we need to focus on prioritizing firearm crime, transferring those to federal court where we can, and working to impose prison sentences on those people who are not allowed to have firearms, such as felons and domestic abusers. Unfortunately, Mr. Neff, when he was at our office, dismissed about 50% of his cases that he had with domestic abusers using firearms. And that's just not acceptable. When we find domestic abusers or felons in possession of firearms, they need to go to prison. It's just too dangerous not to take their guns away from them and get them out of our community.
All right, we're going to move on to closing statements. Mr. Neff, we're doing the opening, so Mr. Olden will be the person at the closing statements.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, again, as I explained about myself and my family, you know, we're invested in this community. We've been here for several years. It's important to us that this community is safe and that we make as many improvements to our community as we can. And we have a lot of opportunities to do that in how we prosecute cases at the county attorney's office. It's important to realize the resources that we have available, as well as the resources that perhaps are a little restricted. And so it's important to have someone who has a wide variety of experience, a depth of experience, a depth of training, someone who has a lot of years as a prosecutor, who can find ways to effectively use the resources that we have available to make our community safe. And I'm that person. And so come November 6th, I ask you to vote for me to continue as Wapello County Attorney. Thank you.
I am sick of waking up week after week after week to hear of yet another shooting of someone that was a felon that had been prosecuted by the Wapello County Attorney's Office for a burglary or for something else and then was let go. Now, I appreciate that my opponent decided to look for once through our entire list of cases so that he could figure out the statistics of the office. That needs to be done not just for a campaign, but monthly on every single attorney. That's the point of a supervisor. You can have employees that mean to do well, but if you're not supervising them, you're not pushing them to the most that they can deliver on, you're not going to get the best out of those attorneys, period. You need a prosecutor who's present and also a supervisor. Now, in terms of getting these shootings under control, if we actually move our cases in a timely manner, then we will actually get people out of this community instead of waiting 2-3 years, like on the Grooms case, only to have that go to probation. That is why my training, my leadership, my experience has already been vouched for by the community that works closest with us prosecutors. Now, after 7 years, my opponent did not obtain that endorsement. I did. I am endorsed by the Ottumwa Police Officers Union, and that's for a reason. They've seen me at trial. They've seen how I deal with my cases. They've seen me how I work with my victims. Trust that experience, trust that leadership, because it is already trusted by the people we work closest with who put their lives on the line all the time, and trust us as prosecutors to get justice when they are endangered. Now, I may not be originally from Wapello County, but we have bought our house here. We have invested here. This is the first place we actually bought a home, the first place we call home. And I want to make sure this is safe, because with shootings happening every week, we're clearly not doing something right. For those of you who don't think we need a change, look around yourself these past couple months. We need a change. I ask that you vote for my candidacy. Vote Neff. Thank you.
So we're going to have a short break. You guys can stand up. I don't want you to leave because we're going to start as soon as we get the name tags up and the water bottles out. Okay, do I need to say it again? All right, I'm sorry. See, that's why I wouldn't be on the radio, because I want to see how people are reacting to me. Okay.
I'm live on this, so if you're talking into this, I can hear you, and the radio can hear you. Just saying.
We love all the radio people.
I would just clarify for this.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
Not according to Gaskell, as long as
Yes, you can do that. Yes, that is an alternative, and you can have somebody attest for you also. I can clarify. No, this is the last year for that.
I feel like this visual demarcation.
I like that too.
I know. I understand that. How about if I do like this and then I can look at them? Yes. Could everybody take their seats, please? Oh, I've got like 10 questions, so I was asking the same thing. No, I think, yeah. But we just wanted to group it.
Okay, as long as you can get everybody.
All right, welcome back. We are going to now move to the candidates for House Districts 80 and 81. We have Holly Brink and Susan McDaniel. We have Mary Gaskell and Sherilyn Westrich. Am I saying that right?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. They get along. That's not why we have them at opposite ends. We have them so that you can see who is running against who, and it just makes it clearer for you when you go to vote. We will now do opening statements, 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Holly Brink, and I'm running for Iowa House District 80, which includes all of Appanoose County, all of Monroe, the west part of Wapello County, but kind of swings around the north and the south of Ottumwa also. And it's also the east half of Mahaska County, excluding Oskaloosa and University Park. I'm a wife, a mother, I'm a business owner, I'm a farmer, and I'm a lifelong resident of Southern Iowa. I grew up on a family farm in Keokuk County. I'm a graduate of Oskaloosa and also a graduate of William Penn University. Today, my husband and I also live on our own family farm. I have 3 children, Garrison, Balin, and Harbor. We both also work off the farm. He works at Farm Credit Service of America, and I work for Aflac as a business consultant. Why am I running? There's several different reasons, but one of them is I'm just a Southern Iowa farm girl, and I love Southern Iowa. My husband and I chose to stay here. We chose to plant roots so that our children could be raised in the same way that we were, with the ethics, the values, and hard work that all Iowans put out there. But more than that, I think I also run because I want to see the education for our children. I think it's important that our local schools have a voice and have a say in what goes on in their own schools. I also want to work on economical development and growth, ensuring that we can continue to grow and prosper. In order to do that, we need to support our manufacturers, our farmers, and also our entrepreneurs that we have here in Southern Iowa, along with agriculture, because guess what? It's the backbone of not only District 80, but it's the backbone of all of Iowa. I would greatly appreciate your support, and thank you all for coming, and thanks to the League of Women Voters and for putting this on tonight. Thank you.
My name is Susan McDaniel, and I grew up on a heritage farm in Appanoose County. And my parents were dairy farmers, and when we got married, my husband, who's back there, we decided that we would also be dairy farmers, and we did that for 25 years. During that time, we raised a family, and I also taught at Centerville High School. I taught senior government and sophomore history for 38 years. During that time, I was really honored and lucky and worked very diligently so that I could win several awards and to make sure that I could work with people to the best of my ability. A few years ago, I retired. I watched what was going on in the Iowa legislature, and I decided that they needed to learn how to work together a little better too, and maybe to be a little more civil. And so I watched what was going on, and I was really, I had 3 concerns at the beginning, but then I've kind of evolved into 4 concerns. One is the budget. I'm very conservative when it comes to money, and I didn't understand how we can have gone from a $900 million surplus to deficit spending. Secondly, public education. As a public teacher for 38 years, naturally, I want funding for Iowa schools, and naturally, I want us to be the most efficient group that we can have. But you can't have great education if you don't fund it. And the third and fourth ones have to do with mental health. Mental health has been, as we've seen, has been a falling apart of mental health. It went from counties to the regions. And as I've worked with mental health issues, we have all these different areas that we need to be concerned with. And the final issue is privatized Medicaid. We've seen that, how it works and doesn't work, and we need to solve that in some form. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Mary Gaskell. I serve District 81, which includes all of Ottumwa, Agency, and Olden areas, and the rural areas around those. Otherwise, the rest of it's in District 80 in Wapello County. I grew up on a farm in Missouri, Northwest Missouri, and I came to Iowa in 1962 when I got married. And my husband had a job with Safeway Corporation at that time, and we came to Ottumwa. Then we went back over to Southwest Iowa and lived over there, where he went to school at the Southwest Community College. And then he decided he wanted to be a state trooper, so he got the training for state trooper, and we moved back to Ottumwa. And that's when I decided that Ottumwa was going to be my home. And we raised our family here. We have 4 children and 7 grandchildren, and all of them are in Iowa except for one who is in Arizona with her other grandmother. I love Ottumwa. I love the people of Wapello County, and I appreciate serving them. I was county auditor for 16 years. When I was county auditor, I learned a lot about legislation, because every time the legislature went into session, they changed some election laws or something else that we had to deal with. And then I went into working with legislation as a county auditor for our county auditors group. And that was a good education. And so whenever the former legislature for our district said he wasn't running again, I said, well, I would like to. So I have been your state legislature for 16 years, and I want another 2 years, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sherilyn Westrich, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I love that the citizens of Wapello County are so engaged. It just is the greatest place to live. I am running for the House District 81, which has already kind of been explained here. And I'm running because I feel like we need a new voice and some new energy in the legislature in Des Moines. I'm someone who works hard. I've been a car builder my whole life, and I've made a career out of building and restoring cars. I'm now one of the most well-known female car builders in the world. And this has afforded me the opportunity to work with and inspire young people all around the country to pursue and to see the value of hands-on jobs in the trades. I'm really proud of my skills as a welder, fabricator, and car builder. I am persistent, I am determined, and I am strong-willed. And it's my view that these are the qualities that Wapello County needs to represent them in Des Moines. As a Midwestern girl, I value our small communities. And as a small business owner with a diverse background, I will work hard enacting legislation that supports and attracts new business here in Southeast Iowa. I run a small business here in Ottumwa where I design hydraulic clutch pedals manufactured locally. I think Iowa is the best place to live, and Wapello County is the place I choose to live because I feel like we are engaged, we are active, and we have one of the best communities. I just want to make sure that Wapello County does not get left behind, and I'll work hard to do that. I hope you'll elect me to represent you in the Iowa House for District 81, and I'm asking for your vote on November 6th.
The lead question is, in 2016, the Iowa Department of Human Services began contracting with private managed care organizations, or MCOs, in the hopes of reducing costs for Medicaid services. Since that time, there have been thousands of reports of Medicaid recipients being denied needed services, delayed payments to healthcare providers. Locally, 2 organizations which provided direct services to Medicaid-eligible persons have gone out of business from what they have described as excessively delayed payments from the MCOs. If elected, what specific legislation would you suggest or support to ensure that MCOs are approving all necessary services and providing payments in a timely manner?
When I've been outdoor knocking, privatized Medicaid is the #1 issue because everyone knows of some home health care aid person that has helped their family so they don't have to send someone to a nursing home, their services have been cut, or that service is non-existent. Legislation that I would propose is that those with fixed costs, those are people that will have our quadriplegics, someone who is born in a severe handicap situation, those would go back to the state. And during that state, you'd have fee for service. The second thing I would do is make sure that we have an oversight legislation that actually has some backbone. Our oversight committee right now has met once in the last year. Once. They haven't listened to anyone that's having problems. So one of the things they have to do is they have to give some real teeth to that so that people are paid on a timely manner instead of being delayed and denied, that can be done in a 30 to 60 days time period. Thank you.
Ms. Gaskell?
Thank you. Well, I've already voted on a bill or an amendment at the State House that was on the Health and Human Services budget last year, and I voted for additional oversight and data collection of the MCOs to protect Medicaid providers and Iowans. I have continually tried to help people, and I wanted to make it better for particularly those 2 businesses here in Ottumwa that just couldn't make it because of the way that they were treated by the MCOs. And it is something that just really bothers me because we say we want small businesses to succeed, and those are small businesses that we are taking the money away from and sending it otherwise because they're taking a lot of that work and taking the money and sending it out of state, and that annoys me as a state legislator.
So with any new rollout, there's going to be bumps in the road, and there are going to be problems that we need to fix. But I'm willing to work with providers, hospitals, and the legislators to work on improving or even reverting back to the old system if necessary. There are ways that we can work on the problems and actually fix them. And this isn't actually a new idea. We are the 40th state to do this. So there are 39 other states under this same program. And I think in working with local providers. I met with the people at Good Sam and had an hour-and-a-half conversation with the folks down there to see what they feel are the necessary changes and to implement those. So I think it's, it's going to take some work, and it's something new for us here in Iowa.
So MCOs have been a huge discussion over the last while. I support legislation for additional oversight of the MCOs. I look at it as they are contract labor to the state of Iowa, and they need to be held accountable, not only to the state, but to the providers and also to the vulnerable people who are using the Medicaid system. I think that in talking to many different providers, one of the biggest concern is lack of communication of the concerns of whether it's going to be denied, how to do it, changes in the system of paperwork. As an individual that has worked with insurance for over 10 years, I can tell you it is extremely frustrating. In my own business this last week, there was a change that I had to relearn for the 4th time in the last 3 months. But we need to hold them accountable for what they said they were going to do. So yeah, I believe we need to put oversight in place, make sure they're held accountable to do the job we hired them.
This question is from Greg Kenning. Many independent and undecided voters are turned off by candidates that can only follow their party's ideology. To demonstrate for us your independent thinking, what part, if any, of your party's platform do you not agree with?
Ms. Gaskell?
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that for a long time. I am a Democrat because I agree with most of the platform of our party. There are times when I disagree at the State House with my caucus in that, for instance, we had a great big discussion on water quality and what we needed to do on water quality, and their desires to take some of the money from the cities to help with the water quality. I wasn't in favor of that and discussed that with them. It's a big thing to go against your party caucus. It kind of makes for bad feelings at a time, but sometimes you can win.
Thank you. I'm going to ask just to slow it down a little bit again. We do have the interpreter, and she's having difficulty kind of keeping up and making sure that all of your messages are getting translated. So
Okay.
I know it's difficult because got a lot to say and you've got a short amount of time, but we want to make sure everybody gets that. So if you kind of be cognizant of that, we really appreciate it very much. Thank you, Ms. Gaskell. Ms. Westridge, please.
So that's kind of a question I hadn't really thought through. I guess I would go to school choice, and that the money should follow the child. And the only real debate I would have with that is that I feel like, when it comes to schooling, parents should have the say-so. It shouldn't be all controlled by government. And I think there's a lot of parents who feel like they don't want the government involved in their school choices. So, if I had to pick something, spur of the moment, I think that's what I would go with.
That's interesting, actually, because I would also choose the voucher program. Many Republicans choose the voucher program. That's something they really want to push. However, I feel that private education is a choice. I choose that for 2 of my children. My other children go to public. I have children in both private and public education. While I believe that it's a very important choice, I choose that. And when I show up for registration for my children at Oskaloosa Christian, I know that that's a choice I make, and I'm willing to pay that. And so that is a differ I have, is I am not in favor of how the voucher program was put out before, as I feel it's a choice.
I believe the Democratic Party has 52 different platforms that they are in support of. And I do not think that I know all 52, but I do know that when they are presented, well, you got to remember what you stand for, what your platform is what you kind of stand for. But it doesn't always mean that's exactly what you're going to vote for. Because I believe that you have to get coalitions of people working together to accomplish whatever that goal might be. And so while if a piece of legislation comes up that I would not agree with, I would definitely be independent and try and do the best I can to be thoughtful and thorough in my investigation of that bill. Thank you.
Concerning school violence and things that have happened recently at Liberty School and other schools around where guns have been involved, do you think that the gun possession, carry, and conceal and carry should be looked at again, and if there should be special laws about, or more, because there are laws about where they can be carried, but a more, what's the word I want? More enforcement of those laws and maybe making them stricter. And this is actually coming from Kurt Meeks, John Wickham, maybe, and John Saffel.
Well, there you have it. Yes. So, Ms. Westridge, please.
So I support the Second Amendment, and I have a concealed carry permit. I think the laws that we have here in Iowa are fantastic. I think we're doing a great job on that. I feel that I should be able to protect myself and my property and stand my ground to protect myself. I feel safer when I'm on long trips driving somewhere if I have my gun with me. I don't, in speaking to school safety, I think our schools are doing good. We have different schools and have different needs. So, they're having drills and they're protecting themselves in the ways that they can. I don't think concealed carry permits are in any way causing school shootings or school violence. And I don't think that it's caused by guns. I think guns have been around since the 1800s, and school shootings certainly have not. So I think we need to look at what's causing that.
I also am a firm believer in the Second Amendment, as I feel a lot of abiding citizens, it would not be fair to remove guns from them, however, leaving them helpless. Because if you did pass a law that took guns out of people's hands, law-abiding citizens would be the ones that would turn them over. However, criminals would again keep their guns, and then all we would do is create more chaos and the inability to protect themselves. When it comes to schools, I grew up in southern Iowa, and it was nothing for the gun rack in the back of every Ford, Chevy, and Dodge in the parking lot to have multiple rifles. We didn't have school shootings. So I think we need to discuss more about why school shootings are happening, not what's used to shoot. I think it is very important as children I have 3 children, and it is very hard discussion to sit down to tell them what is the safest route of escape. I had to sit down last year with my 14-year-old at the time and have a discussion of where's the safest place in your school. If you're in this hallway, where do you go? I get a little emotional about this because it was a conversation I never thought I'd have with a child. But again, the guns aren't killing them. What is causing people to shoot is what we need to focus on, and that's our mental health. Start with the youngest level.
I'll agree with Holly on this one. One of the things that is important to remember is that usually the individuals that are having a problem and bringing a gun to school has a mental issue, and that mental issue needs to be dealt with. And what do? We're getting rid of guidance counselors. We're demanding more things that teachers are supposed to be able to do. And then we're supposed to give all kinds of training, Alice training. I don't know if you've ever had that if you're a teacher, but it's all what to do if there is a shooter in the school. I never thought I'd ever teach to that point, that I would have to have training on what to do in a school with a shooter. So I think we have to be very aware of what's going on in our community. We have to be aware of what people are doing, how family units are, because family unit is not the same as it used to be. And we need to give as much support as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as I said, I grew up on the farm, and then we had guns on the farm. I lived with a law enforcement officer, and then we had a gun in our house for years. I don't carry a gun myself. I just don't care to do that, but I think that everyone has the right to make that choice. And I voted for the bill that allowed for the sheriffs to no longer issue the gun permits, because I felt that there was some discrimination going on, and I just felt it needed to be a statewide program. So everybody in the state could carry a gun if they wanted to carry a gun. I am concerned about the mental health. I am concerned about the schools. And if there's more funding that we can do to help the schools, make their schools safer, I'm certainly willing to look at that. Thank you.
I have the same question from 3 different people. Basically, it is, do you believe IPERS would be do you believe that IPERS would be better run by a private for-profit business? And do you support IPERS?
I absolutely support IPERS. I feel it is very, very important. Our public service people in Iowa, that is a promise that we made to them when they took that profession. There have been concerns over the last few years. In 2010, we did a reform because the recessions of 2001, 2009, it caused a reform in 2010, increasing percentages of that individuals would pay in. At this time, the reform they did in 2010 is actually really working because the markets are growing so much that it was underfunded by $7 billion. It is growing and gaining back on that to pay back. And I absolutely don't think we need to touch it right now. Anybody who knows that when you're dealing with the markets, when it's growing, you don't sell out. So no, I don't think we need to do a change at all in IPERS.
IPERS allows me to be here today. So I really am impressed with IPERS. I know that there is a definitive pension that you have. So you have a set amount that comes every month for as long as you live. And that's a whole different thing than others. And a 401k, which you could start with, there's been talk about that as being a change. The problem with doing that as a new teacher or a new public employee, what that means is that there won't be any money coming in and IPERS will implode on itself. So we have to make sure that we maintain the system that we have and to make sure that it is consistent and well run. It is one of the best run systems in the United States, and we should be very proud of that. And I thank everybody for IPERS every day. Thank you.
Yes. Well, IPERS has a lot of oversight. I'm very pleased with the 2 committees that oversight IPERS. And it is a good thing for public employees that is there. Many times their wages are less than what the private area is. And they take that because they see that there is promise of a retirement and health insurance. We're currently paying more for our health insurance as state employees, but it's still a good deal for employees and for the people of the state, because a lot of the IPERS retirees stay in Iowa, and I see a lot of them around volunteering and making things better for Iowa.
So I hate to just keep concurring, but I concur. I think our IPERS program here in Iowa is fantastic. I think it's well run and we do have good oversight. I think that right now it's solvent and we're ahead of the game, so that's great. And I would never vote to change IPERS for those receiving it now. I understand in the future, you don't know what's going to happen, but right now I think we're doing a great job. And I don't see a reason why we'd need to change it.
Yes. Okay. Kind of along the same lines, what is your opinion or position on collective bargaining? Do you think unions are important? And specifically, a question on collective bargaining for Iowa's public employees. So that's kind of basically, do you believe in unions? Do you believe in unions for public employees?
I was chief negotiator for Centerville High School teachers for a period of time. And one of the things I liked about that had to do with actually getting to talk with administrators across the table about different issues, not just money, working conditions, how many students, what time you're even going to go there, what your sick leave and sick absence is, if you have a funeral. I mean, it was all laid out there in that contract. They gutted collective bargaining, and now you can only really collect or bargain for money. There's so much more to teaching than that. There's so much more to any job than just the salary that you have. So I believe in collective bargaining. I also believe that we need to make sure that we support our workers that are working for our state. If we don't, nobody will ever want to work for the state.
Yes, I support unions. I support collective bargaining and was devastated when that happened at the State House. They took that away from public employees. The only thing that they can negotiate for are salaries. And then they have put everything into a handbook, which just goes before the board of whatever organization it is, and they can decide in one evening to change that before employees had some rights in deciding how their workplace worked. And I think that should continue. And I will do everything that I can. Hopefully, I have the opportunity to put that back in place.
So I grew up in a union household. My dad was a member of the Local 36 Sheet Metal Workers Union, and I've seen what the unions did for my dad. And I support collective bargaining, but I don't support or believe in using union dues to support political parties. I think that negotiating your salaries is definitely a benefit. And so I support unions, but I can't say that I don't agree with what's been happening. I think we're moving in a good direction.
I look at unions two different ways. We have public and private. On the public sector, we have changed collective bargaining. I've sat down with many teachers. I tried to, and several of them were like, yep, we already got our plan figured out. It actually went way smoother than projected. I've even had a couple teachers say it hasn't been near like I felt like it was going to go. Is it perfect? No. So I do, with the Chapter 20, I believe we're moving in the right direction there. When it comes to private unions, they're not using taxpayer money. It's their right to work, and I feel that we can continue with that.
Just one more question. If elected, would you vote to rescind tax cuts at the state level?
The tax cuts that were passed is it my turn, or did I butt in? Okay. At this time, I want to look at the budget. I wasn't happy with it, and I voted against it, as probably most of you already know, because I wanted to wait and to see how the federal tax cuts worked out, and so that we would be assured that we had the money at the State House to be able to provide the services that we were to provide. And I will not jump right in and take those away, because I want to have a good look at it and see what's going to happen with the budget.
So I think the new tax cuts are great. I support them, and I think that it's having a great effect on our budget statewide. We have a surplus, and so no, I would not vote to take them away. I hope when I'm in the legislature, I can get on a committee and help to solve any issues that come up. I think definitely people need to put money back in their own pockets and decide how to spend their own money. I'm very conservative when it comes to money, so yeah, I think we're heading in a good direction the way we're going now.
I absolutely support the tax credits that were done. I feel the hardworking Iowans deserve that money in their pocket, and they can then choose and put it into play within their local communities, helping exponential growth. We all know that every dollar you spend in your local community produces $1.7. So why would we not want the individuals in our community to have more money in their hands to be able to put it into the local businesses that do support our schools, that do support all of our local growth that we have? With the capital expenditures deduction, I absolutely am in favor of that. We need to get back to where we match the federal level. And it will be approximately 3 years before that's fully done. But taking it from $25,000 and moving it to the $100,000 and continue the growth of that will help our small businesses, our ag, which support us. And I feel it is very important. We had a surplus, and I hope that number keeps growing.
The tax cuts are certainly controversial if you pay any attention to what's going on. And one of the things is we just don't know what the results are going to be right now. We're going to have to look at that. We're going to have to examine that. And that's something sometimes we don't do very well. We look at small-term gains, and we don't look down the road for long-term situations. So right now, I would definitely support the tax cuts, but when we start having, if we don't have enough money to cover our expenditures at the state level, we'll probably have to look at them again. But we don't know. We'll have to observe that. That's where you got to have accountability and you got to have efficiency. Just smaller doesn't mean anything. You have to be accountable and you have to have efficiency.
All right, we're going to move on to our closing statements. And you're going to have 1 minute. And so we're going to start with Ms. Westridge. You will begin.
Well, I think that when it comes to legislating, you need someone who is a hard worker, and I am that. I feel like I can bring a lot of new energy up to the House and be someone that really takes charge. I'm going to try to join a lot of different committees and get involved everywhere I can. You know, of course, I want to protect taxpayers and lower our taxes. We just spoke about that. We're doing good. I want to make sure that where we're allocating that money, that we put it in the right places. And so working on that, economic development, supporting enhanced education and vocational training, and just helping to bring more business, support the businesses here in Wapello County, and bring new businesses in. I think Wapello County needs to be at the same level as our state, and our state is doing wonderful. We're the best place to live. And I want to make Wapello County the best place to live. Thank you, and I hope to get your vote on November 6th.
Thank you all again for coming out. Thank you for hosting the forum. Again, I'm Holly Brink, and I ask for your support. I think it's very important that I can bring a lot of different diversity to the legislature. Not only do I have children in education, I'm in the trenches of it. I know what's going on in both private and public. I'm a business owner. We also farm. And I've been here for many years. And for the last 10 years, I've worked with businesses to help them find solutions, to help them grow and help build morale within their employees, which also helped me put myself in front of many different Southern Iowas, where I learned to hear about the challenges that they have on many different levels, whether it be from schools to their homes to many different, financial issues. I feel I can bring a lot of different knowledge and background to this, along with a younger perspective of in the trenches. So I'd appreciate your support, and thank you again for coming.
One of the things that I've noticed that as I've been campaigning is that you have to listen to people. It might not be all my idea. It might not be the best idea that I've had. But when I listen to others, I know that there are wonderful ideas out there. We need to listen to each other, and that's something I believe I can bring to the Iowa legislature. Listening skills, communication skills, working together. Because if we don't work together as a unit, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever type of party you might belong to, because if we really want to make Iowa grow, we have to work together. And so I hope that I ask for your vote so that when in January, I can help people to work together so we can have the best success that we can have. Thank you all.
Thank you, and thank you for the League for providing this opportunity. I want to go back to the tax cuts and just tell you this, that the tax cuts went to the more well-to-do Iowans and not the people that really needed it, but I still want to review it when I have an opportunity. There are 400, and according to the business record, 450,000 Iowa households that can't afford to the necessities of life. 450,000. And we gave the tax cuts to the more well-to-do. Now, I heard tonight, I think things are changing in the Republican Party because I heard two statements that said that they agreed with what I agreed with. They didn't say so that they agreed with me, but their opinions were the same. So I asked for your vote, even though I'm not a Republican, I am a Democrat, and I ask for your vote.
Okay, just while they are changing places, I just wanted to clarify, it was brought to my attention that I didn't clarify this well enough. Without ID in 2018, you may be able to vote by signing an oath verifying your identity. The other way that you can vote without an ID is if you have an attester. So if you go in, you don't have an ID, but John Doe, your next door neighbor, is there and he has his ID, he can attest for you and say, yes, I know that's Susie Brown and she lives at that address. So those are the two ways that you can do it. It'll be the last year, though, you can do that. I'm just going to ask you guys, do you have any questions about voting? Because, you know, I kind of know some things. I don't know everything, but I work the polls, so I can tell you what I'm going to do when people come in, but everybody understands pretty much that no straight ballot. You're going to have to do it bit by bit. You're going to have to, starting next year, show ID. If you're new to, and I will say this again because this is the biggest thing, is if you have moved since the last time you voted, please bring in something that shows your new address, because that is going to throw us for a loop and we're going to have a hard time getting you back into the system. So please, if you have moved, if you have married and changed your name, if you have divorced and changed your name, please bring some kind of information with you to show that if you are wanting to go by that new name or that new address, because we are going to need that in order to put it into the computer. Yes, the auditor is open now, and they will be open the 2 Saturdays before the election if you want to do that. They will get you the right. It does not matter what precinct you're in. If you go to the auditor's office, they will pull that voting ballot and give it to you. So you'll be able to vote for who you need to. So it's, you know, and if you know any kids that are going to be 18 by the time voting, get them out and get them registered. Bring them with you. We'll register them at the polls. But we need to get the youth more involved It's when I look at the people that are voting, granted I'm at South Oak Towers, but for the most part, everybody who is voting is in their 50s and on up. I don't see that many younger people, and we need to get those. So anything that you guys can do to bring somebody with you. Do you have a suggestion? You stood up. No. You just stood up. Well, you have Indian Hills, so I thought maybe you had a suggestion. But, bring somebody. If they're worried about coming, offer to bring them. Offer to help them. So, yes.
That request needs to be in the auditor's office 10 days before the election. That is a shortened time.
Yes. So if you are asking for the absentee ballot, it has to be in 10 days before the election. So pre-registration deadline is October 27th. Excuse me?
That's the same date as requested.
Yeah. Auditor's office is open for return absentee ballots on the 3rd. November 5th, absentee ballots, in-person deadline, absentee ballot postmark date. This will be the other thing that I ask. If you have not gotten your absentee ballot mailed in or taken up to the clerk of court, or not clerk of court, the auditor's office, bring it with you to the polls. We're not going to accept it. We're going to write void on it because you can't vote with absentee at the polls. But if you can't give it to us either, because we will not be able to deliver those up there until we have closed the polls. And once the polls are closed, then that absentee ballot is not going to work. So if you bring your absentee ballot to where you're going to vote, you need to surrender that. We'll mark it void. We'll let you mark it void, and then we'll go ahead and let you vote. So, does that cover everything, Trudy? Thank you. Okay, so we have Marianetta Miller-Meeks and Mary Stewart. You have 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Good evening. Hola, ¿cómo están? I'm Marianette Miller-Meeks, and I'm running for Senate District 41. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, all of you here today, and all of you listening or watching on television. I left home at 16 in order to put myself through medical school. My father was a Master Sergeant in the Air Force. My mother had gotten a GED, worked numerous jobs, and ultimately ended up as a medical secretary. When I was 15, I had 2nd and 3rd degree burns, and during that very long hospitalization, decided I wanted to be a doctor. So I left home at 16, got my second job, worked, put myself through San Antonio Community College, enlisted in the Army at age 18, got a degree in nursing, worked as a nurse, got promoted to lieutenant and eventually to lieutenant colonel, was able to put myself through medical school, and along the way met the wonderful man who's become my husband and been my husband for the past 35 years. My husband and I both currently live in Ottumwa. I work in Burlington and commute back and forth. I'm running for office because healthcare is a huge issue today, but also I know veterans issues. I've run a small business. I know about hiring people, signing a paycheck, and having been the director of public health, those issues both within government and non-government and how it can work together. Sometimes government's the answer, but sometimes we all are the answer.
My name is Mary Stewart, and I'm running for the Iowa Senate. I'm a native Iowan and a resident of Ottumwa since 1975. I come from a blue-collar family raised by a single mom. And from the age of 14, I've lived on my own, supporting myself and completing my education. I understand the hardships that many Iowans face and many Iowa families face. My husband, Tom, and I have been married for 40 years and have 3 grown sons. I'm a graduate of Indian Hills, William Penn University, Truman State University, and I worked at Indian Hills for 33 years, the last 10 as the Dean of Academic Services. My work included supervision and development of job training and economic development programs, technical education plans for the college and for K-12s, and all activities that were related to academic retention of students. I worked regionally across 10 counties and served on numerous state job training committees. I'm a first-time candidate running for office. I have a vision for Iowa. I was disappointed in some of the legislation that I saw during the last 2 legislative sessions. Disappointed in what I saw happening with healthcare, also with collective bargaining, with workers' compensation, with cuts to education. And those are things that I determined if you want to make a difference and you want to make a change, then it's time to stand up and be the person that does that. I have the skills, the work ethic, and the vision to help build Iowa's future in the Senate, and I look forward to that opportunity.
In 2016, the Iowa Department of Human Services began contracting with private managed care organizations in the hopes of reducing costs for Medicaid services. Since that time, there have been thousands of reports of Medicaid recipients being denied needed services and delayed payments to health care providers. Locally, 2 organizations which provided direct services to Medicaid-eligible persons have gone out of business from what they have described as excessively delayed payments from the MCOs. If elected, what specific legislation would you suggest or support to ensure that MCOs are approving all necessary services and providing payments in a timely manner?
Well, one of the things that occurred to me as Mary Gaskell spoke earlier, and I think she forgot to mention that, but there was an amendment that was proposed to do exactly that, to guarantee that oversight of the MCOs occurred and that there was some sort of payment or result of neglecting to pay claims on time or in a timely fashion or denial of those claims. And it did not make it to the floor. So my position is that Medicaid is not working for Iowans. I knock on many, many doors. I talk to people. Healthcare is an issue at every doorstep. I think we need to move to change privatization of Medicaid. I'm supported by the Iowa Hospital Association, and they just put out a plan called a third-party plan, I believe it is, where they at least have some suggestions for beginning to improve the situation with healthcare in Iowa.
Certainly, whenever you change plans to a new plan from the existing plan that we had, and you expand access to that, so you have more people on the Medicaid plan than you did before in the past when it was run by the state, there will be some issues that come about. Denial of payment or a slow payment is not a new issue. We had the same issue with Medicare. As a matter of fact, it required federal legislation at that level to get timely payment for Medicare and for other insurance companies. So proper oversight, if oversight is needed, and from my indications and what I've read, it sounds like it is needed from my conversations. Legislation can be passed that can have, if there is a clean claim that it has to be paid in a certain amount of time, there can be penalties for denial of clean claims. And so there are certainly oversight legislation that may be important as we move forward. Whether or not we change back to the old system, it will not happen overnight.
I'm going to ask the question, but then I'm going to give you a little background. I could do that background first, even. In April 2018, Kim Reynolds signed into law SF 481, the so-called Anti-Sanctuary Cities Bill. The law went into effect July 1st and complies local law enforcement to comply with any instruction made in a detainer request to hold peoples or persons without a warrant or probable cause of crime in violation of the Constitution. It also supports illegal searches and seizures of people, of citizens and people who have green cards. They do not make a distinction between citizens and holders of green cards and illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants. So the question is, and this comes from Evelyn Rivera, the League of United Latin American Citizens is strongly opposed to SF 481, a bill which violates constitutional rights and facilitates racial profiling. Do you support returning discretion back to local law enforcement officials?
I'm not in favor of sanctuary cities, but I am in favor of the Constitution. I think that people should not be detained merely because of the way they look. If there is a criminal act or a law that's being broken, then I think those people have due process like anybody else that would be in the act of committing a crime. So I don't believe people should be stopped simply because of the way they look or there's a suspicion that they may be a citizen or a non-citizen, but I'm not in favor of sanctuary cities.
As I understand the law and as I understand the status of that in Iowa, there are no sanctuary cities in the state of Iowa, and the law prohibits them from becoming sanctuary cities. I think we need to look at the real issue, which is immigration reform, and that needs to be addressed at the federal level. With a majority party in both houses, they could push the issue through if they wanted to, and that simply has not been done. And we also need to look at stiffer penalties for employees who ignore existing laws when they are in the hiring process. I know that that bill was opposed by nearly all of law enforcement across the state of Iowa, sheriffs and deputies associations. So I am not in favor of sanctuary cities, but I am certainly in favor of immigration reform.
This question is from Holly Berg. In recent years, we've seen local control eroding in our state, taking away the cities and counties' ability to govern the best to their abilities, including providing mental health care, minimum wage, and other serious issues. What will you do to give power back to local jurisdictions who often better understand the needs of their citizens?
Well, I do believe in local control, and I think we saw what happened in several instances when Wapello County was among the few counties in the state of Iowa to pass a minimum wage bill, only to see it rolled back by the legislature. I believe in local control, and I think that the majority party, who's advocated for local control for many years and on many issues, has not proven to be as true or held as fast to that as they have in the past. So there have been bills passed that won't allow locals to decide on whether to use plastic shopping bags in their communities, minimum wage, county election maps, the list goes on.
Well, local control is one of those issues from a constitutional perspective that I would support and that the Republican Party has typically supported. There are some issues, however, that are then superseded by either state law or federal law, and often those are constitutionally directed. The minimum wage law, I think we have to look at our area and the amount of poverty in our area, the job growth in our area, and what helps us succeed here. So I think it's an issue that has many different facets to it, and it's not a simple issue as, is this local control or is this not local control? But I do believe that people that live in an area, work in an area, know the individuals within their county government or their local area are often more educated and informed and make better decisions than having it relegated to a government body that's further and further from them.
One criticism of and this comes from Miriam Kenning, the one criticism of our last two state senators was that each were inaccessible to all of their constituents. What will you do to keep open lines of communications with all constituents?
Well, I'm known as a very energetic individual, and I guess you could say that is proven by the fact that I was up this morning at 4:30, drove to Burlington to work, drove back here, and I'm here participating in a forum with you, and hopefully I'm wide-eyed and awake. I tend to be a very accessible individual. That comes from my background, both as a physician, as a nurse, as a student nurse, as a veteran, as a small business owner. To this day, when I operate on Wednesdays, I call my patients at night to check on them to see how they're doing. So I'm known for the fact that I'm accessible. I return phone calls. We now have myriad of avenues to be able to communicate with individuals. One is participating in the events within our communities, our local events, such as the legislative forums that are put on by the League of Women Voters. But also we have email, we have Twitter, we have forums that we can host on our own, town halls, meet and greets, and then participating in those local events within our 4 counties.
Well, I would continue to legislate exactly as I have campaigned. I have traveled across this district, meeting with individuals, meeting with small groups of people, sitting through local boards of supervisor meetings, meeting with high school superintendents. I was fortunate enough to work at an institution where collaboration and teamwork were at the top of the list. They were our priority. So we seldom operated a program or an initiative that didn't involve an advisory committee. And as a legislator, I would continue to meet with constituents on at least a monthly basis and to utilize advisory committees, because I believe that it's the people's voices that go to Des Moines with mine. It's not my opinions alone.
If you had to cut anywhere in the state budget during a reapportionment situation, where would you cut? And this comes from Blake Smith.
Well, we've already done a lot of cutting, so that would make the task even more difficult. And with the tax cuts that we've seen, it's difficult to get much leaner than we have. I don't know that I would advocate cutting for a specific program or activity, especially at this point in time, without looking at the state budget, where it stands following these tax cuts, and with the additional costs and expenses that we're going to incur for healthcare here in Iowa. We also have some improvements that need to be made in education. So I wouldn't really address a specific issue.
I would cut my salary. I think that's where I would start. Public service is precisely that, it's public. So I think the first thing I would cut would be my salary, or offer to relinquish my salary. I think looking at the budget to determine where there are needs, and having been the director of the Department of Public Health, we were able to organize our department such that we utilize the funds to their maximum benefit. And this was done in the collaboration with our department and our State Board of Health, which is our oversight organization. There are ways that there are duplications of services that don't add benefit or value to the citizens. There is fraud. We know that there have been some high-profile cases of embezzlement and money that's wrongly or incorrectly spent. And I think there are ways that we can look at those to determine, are there duplications? Is there fraud? Is there waste that doesn't add value to what that we currently offer the citizens and could be redirected in another direction?
I like this question. So it's from Greg Kenning. Many independent and undecided voters are turned off by candidates that can only follow their party's ideology. To demonstrate for us your independent thinking, what part, if any, of your party's platform do you not agree with?
The gold standard. I don't think that we should go back on the gold standard. That's part of the Republican Party platform. We can argue on the merits whether or not the United States should have gone off the gold standard, and that happened to be under a Republican president. But it's one of the things that I don't agree with. I think it's going to be very hard to channel backward on that. I tend to be very independent in my thinking. I'm a consensus builder. Listen, it's part of my profession and how I've grown up in a family of 8 kids. you had to raise your voice sometimes to be heard, but most of the time, you could bring people together and function on a common goal. Our common goal is to make our state the best place to live, work, and play, and that includes our district.
I'm going to address that in more general terms regarding the Democratic Party platform. While I adhere to and believe in democratic principles for the most part, there are some sections of the platform that I believe deal with far more extreme points of view and positions than most Iowans agree with. And in those cases, I would choose to differ. As I've knocked on doors and visited with people, the one thing that I've heard from people is that they want a degree of moderation and normalcy back in politics and back in their lives. They're not as inclined to follow those people that are on the far right or the far left. They want something, they want to restore normal. And I hear that every day as I visit with them. And the absence of that has created a sense of fear among citizens. And I think that that would be the area where I would disagree with my party's platform.
It's the same question basically from Evelyn Rivera and Bobby Orman, I'm sorry. The United Nations recently released a report discussing that global temperatures could reach an irreversible tipping point in just 12 years if the world doesn't act to dramatically reduce CO2 emissions. The Iowa Republican Party platform opposes all mandates associated with alleged global warming or climate control. This is not a partisan issue, at least it shouldn't be. The consensus is unanimous in the scientific community. Global climate change is a threat to all human life. Would you support or do you support this? Republicans, do you support this plank of the state platform? And I guess for the Democrat is start controlling emissions, CO2 emissions.
Well, I do believe in climate change, and I think that Iowa has been a leader in energy efficiency programs and renewable fuels and in alternative energy. So that's certainly the direction that I would propose that Iowa should continue. I think we need to do everything we can. This planet here is not only here for our use, but for future generations. And that involves issues like water quality issues as well. So, I absolutely support every effort we can make to make sure that we sustain the planet and that we keep our environment healthy and clean, whether that is air, water, or our soil, which is one of Iowa's most valuable resources.
Well, we're supposed to be good stewards of our environment, and that certainly means looking at how we utilize energy and our sources of energy. And all sources of energy have their own inherent problems. So recently there was a study that talking about windmills and wind farms and how they change the airflow and air currents around wind farms and how that may actually raise temperatures. So I don't think we know precisely what's going to be the best energy source for the future, but I do have hope that through science we're going to find that out. I am a supporter of both solar, wind energy, our current fuel system, biodiesel, which we get from our farming community, and certainly the nutrient reduction program that we've had in our state. We're looking at water quality. All of our environmental issues, be they water, air, or the soil, they're important to us as we move forward, both for our own lifestyle and our quality of life, and also that of our children and the future children. So I do think looking at the environment, supporting alternative energy sources as we go forward, but also not forgetting that it's not static, it's dynamic, and we will change, and our energy source of the future may change.
Again, this question, there's several people who are asking, do you support collective bargaining specifically for public employees and also IPERS?
Well, I think collective bargaining has an extremely important role. And when people ask me this question, both my father was a union member when he worked at Brown and Root in Texas, and my brother also. Collective bargaining serves a function as an intermediary and a negotiation between an employer and an employee. I like to say that if employers treated their employees like their most valuable asset, you wouldn't need a union. But unfortunately, that doesn't always occur. I do think there's a difference between public sector and private sector unions, because public sector unions negotiate with elected officials who are in and out of office, but they don't negotiate with the taxpayer who pays for the revenues that then fund all of our public services. But I do think there should be some negotiations and some bargaining even among public sectors, since we already have public sector unions, that should be respected.
I do believe in the right of public employees to collectively bargain. That was a piece of bipartisan legislation that was brought to the legislature by a Republican governor and was approved with unanimous support. And that gave people the opportunity to bargain not only about wages, but about workplace safety conditions and about overtime pay, vacation, health insurance, and other aspects of that. You know, I am an IPERS member. I heard Susan McDonald make that statement up here. IPERS is a sound system, and it also is an economic development tool for communities. IPERS retirees bring over $9 million a year into Wapello County alone. So I am a firm believer, and I'm committed to collective bargaining and to the IPERS system.
And I think this will be our last question. And this comes from Chris Moore and Edwin Reyes. They both want to know, will you take money away from public schools for vouchers to fund private schools?
I will not. I believe in public education, and I believe in fully funding public education for all Iowans. I am a product of both systems. I attended 8 years of a private Catholic parochial school. For people who've heard me speak before, you know that my background and my beginnings were humble at best. My mother was a housekeeper and did laundry for a living while raising 2 small children. But she made it a priority to make private school education for us, and she paid the tuition for that. I believe that public education is a commitment we need to make to all Iowans, and we need to fund that adequately, and we need to make sure that schools are funded so they are providing the best quality education they can to every Iowa student.
Well, I have attended public school my entire elementary, middle school, and high school years, as did my 7 siblings. Both of my children attended public school, and I thought my children have had an extremely good education. I also think, however, when you talk to community college individuals and teachers and 4-year colleges and universities, we're having students that are ill-prepared to go forward. With that said, I do believe that we need to fund our education system and to fund it in a way that provides the best education possible for our young people so that they can venture out into careers, either into the workforce or into higher education, should they desire to go into a more professional career. I do believe in school choice. Whether or not I would support vouchers to take away school funding, I'd want to make sure that our educational system was funded in the current setting before I would approve or sign on or vote for legislation for vouchers.
We're going to go to closing statements, and it's no one gets you started, so Mary, you're going to have to find the story. Thank you.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for participating in this forum, and unfortunately, there's not as much civic engagement as we need in today's world. You've listened to a lot of opinions this evening, and now it's your responsibility to determine who will receive your vote. I believe I have the experience and the skills to represent this district. I don't ascribe to a political base. I believe that once you're elected, you represent all Iowans, and you make the best decisions you can with the long view in mind. Since June of 2015, I've driven over 20,000 miles and knocked on thousands of doors asking about your concerns, your vision for Iowa. When elected, that partnership won't end. This is our campaign and our voice in Des Moines. We'll continue to meet one-on-one and in small groups to make sure that your voice reaches the Senate. And we've been in this together from the start, and we'll move on to Des Moines the same. I want to thank you for your attention and for your vote on November 6th.
Again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, all of you in attendance and those that are listening either on television or on the radio. I'm Marionette Miller Meeks, running for Senate District 41. I also want to thank Mary Stewart for running a campaign. Having been in campaigns before, I can tell you that they're an extremely arduous thing to do, and it really takes a self-serving individual to be able to run for office. Having said that, I would say that going forward, although my opponent is capable and intelligent, I believe that the issues that face us now when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to health issues, how we fund healthcare, education, having a master's in education, business growth, the amount of poverty that we see in our area, how do we grow businesses, create jobs, so that all of our citizens can reach their full potential. I feel that I'm the most qualified candidate to be voted into office this coming November. So I would humbly ask for your support and your vote now, early, or on November 6th. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. It's nice right now. It's supposed to get worse again. And I want to thank all of the TV and radio and newspaper people that are here, and get out the vote.
Hey, hey.